So Facebook stole your data against your will and their stock rose. They stole more data and it rose again. Then it fell. But don't worry, because your friendly neighborhood analysts have suggested that this is a great opportunity to buy the stock. A company so massive it no longer matters what actions they take. Simply having enough data ensures that they remain all powerful. They will ensure their close ties with government and put on a show for the media. Social media is the undisclosed wing of the government. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we're going to look at Facebook. There's a lot of details. I'm not going to get into all of them because, quite frankly, you're going to fall asleep. But I'm going to cover some very important facts about this company right now. This is one of the biggest companies in the world today. It began as something very, very small, and it grew and expanded beyond what anyone would imagine. So obviously we can get into the ins and outs of the company. They bought Instagram and they did this and that. It doesn't matter. Okay, not for this video. We're going to talk about what they have done, what they have admitted to do, and how the scandals keep piling up further and further and further. And something else. Their stock continues to rise in the short term. This is the one day after new information is unveiled that they stole more data, they gave up more. It doesn't matter, because this company that has a market cap of $432 billion continues to expand. If we look at it over the last month, along with all of these other stocks, we can see that this has risen. It continues to rise along with most of the FANG stocks, other stocks in the tech sector, others in the S&P 500. In fact, almost every single asset right now has moved up from its lows, which is a complete opposite of what we saw throughout 2018. So this shows us what could happen even when a company has scandal after scandal after scandal. They are there in front of the parliaments and Congress and everything, getting grilled every single day, and yet it doesn't even matter. So looking at this over the last 6 months, or perhaps even the last year, you can see what has occurred. They've engaged in a lot of need to put out these fires, and I don't think it's really working in reality. But hey, look at the stock. It continues to go up. It doesn't seem to matter what they're actually doing behind the scenes. Now, this is some new information right here. Apple now says it has revoked Facebook's iOS developer certificate, which Apple intends to be used for a company's employees to sideload apps without needing the App Store, not for the purposes that Facebook used. That's their statement at the bottom. Basically, if you've never seen this before, normally what happens is if you want to download an app onto the Apple devices, you have to go to the App Store, you download it, and then that allows you to get them so that they can properly vet all the applications that people are putting in there. This is what they do, and as a result, this is very rigorous, the testing that they put in, and so people cannot just install anything, okay? That's not the way it works. It's not as if you can just check a little box and then that allows all the downloads like on Android that they have. This is very different. But in this case here, what they call side-loading apps, this was able to allow Facebook to go completely around all the rules and regulations, which it definitely would not have been allowed to do. And it's a company that's huge. You would think that they would find a way to do this legitimately, but of course they didn't. So this is yet another one to add to the list. All right, more recently we've seen some of the things that have happened, whether it goes back to the Cambridge Analytica issue all the way to present. There have been more and more instances where they knowingly gave your data away. For years, Facebook gave some of the world's largest technology companies more intrusive access to users' personal data than it has been disclosed, effectively exempting those business partners from usual privacy rules according to internal records and interviews. So the New York Times goes into this big long expose. If you want to read the details, I'll leave the link in the description and the sources. This basically just shows you everything, and I'm not going to talk about everything, but including all the names you've probably heard of, but we also now have Netflix, we have Huawei, we have all these huge technology companies that have been accessing the data without the knowledge image of the individual. It was decided that they would have to give, Facebook that is, would have to give explicit permission from the user in order to be able to get it for those companies, but that's not what they did. They just took the information and gave it to the companies who wanted access to it. Of course, they suggest that they didn't do it on purpose. This was a hole. This was a bug. This wasn't us. This was something that we did wrong. We're very sorry, and so on. But that's not the way it works, okay? They know what they did. This is a massive corporation with so many levels of security, with so much red tape. If you've ever worked for one of these major corporations, you would know how it is. If you want to scratch your nose, you have to sign 3 sheets of paper. You got to sign this with your boss and your boss's boss and your boss's sister's boss and your boss's barber's boss and everybody else along the line. And it gets a little bit ridiculous. So there's no possible way that this information was simply just given out behind the scenes and it was just not known to be done. That is not true. It is simply not true. Now, you can look through the details more if you are interested, but basically just wanted to show you that some of these companies, including foreign companies, had access to the data. And we're talking about everything people do. Everything is on this Facebook. It tracks people when they're not even aware of it. It has everything from their birthday all the way through, everywhere they go, everywhere they visit, all the pictures they've taken, all the communications they have, all the apps that connect in with that. So you have to understand, it's not just Facebook. You have, of course, Facebook with Instagram, with WhatsApp. Those are the ones they directly own. Then all the other ones that connect into Facebook. And there are an infinite amount of companies that will use your Facebook account as your means of logging in. So of course, you give permission to the app. Now you suggest within that permission, oh, I only want to give them permission to log in, let's say, or maybe just my contact list. But that's not the way it works. They basically open you up to everything. That is the information that has now been disclosed. You can read it for yourself if you're interested. Here we go. This is directly from the Parliament in the UK, their own website. They have this information right on number 1. Facebook have clearly entered into whitelisting agreements with certain companies, which meant that after the platform changes in 2014-2015, they maintain full access to friends' data. It is not clear that there was any user consent for this, nor how Facebook decided which companies should be whitelisted or not. This is directly from the Parliament in the UK. I'm not saying this. This is where I'm getting the information. So if you want to read that as well, link in the description. So this is part of what I discussed just a moment ago. Desperate for data on its competitors, Facebook has been secretly paying people to install a, quote, Facebook Research VPN that lets the company suck in all of a user's phone and web activity similar to Facebook's Onavo Project app that Apple banned in June and that was removed in August. Facebook sidesteps the App Store and rewards teenagers and adults to download the Research app and give it root access to network traffic in what may be a violation of Apple policy, so the social network can decrypt and analyze their phone activity. We are talking about something huge. This is massive. They're going way around it. It's not as if this was a little slip up, a little bug. This is huge. They are directly violating the terms and agreements. For a company this big, it seems so unlikely. The lawsuits and the legal problems they're going to face because of this are obviously going to be huge, but it's not a problem. They'll pay those couple $1 million in fines, and it's just a slap on the wrist for a $432 billion company that analysts constantly continue to say buy. Since 2016, Facebook has been paying users ages 13 to 35 up to $20 per month plus referral fees to sell their privacy by installing this app. Then you also have the fact that they were told to take a screenshot of their Amazon order history page. They want data on Amazon. This goes into further detail. They suggested that this is all done. We're not doing this anymore. We're shutting down the iOS app. We're going to close it off. And so they did so. Apparently, this is only the beginning. I'm sure they'll find another way to get around it, and this is the way it is. So this is basically the steps that somebody would need to take. If you're interested, just to look at that. This is again how it would look as a user. You'd basically go in. This is obviously looks to me like an advertisement on Instagram. This get the pop-up on there, you swipe up, you hit that button, it installs it for you, and then you have this easy way for a young person to make $20 a month. And so they did. They didn't realize what they were doing. Perhaps they didn't care, but this is going around the policies which have been put into place. UK lawmaker Damian Collins releases seized Facebook emails, claims the company lacks straight answers. So there's a lot of details in here actually, which is basically going with that report that I showed you a moment ago from the Parliament, but basically getting into all of the explanations and why and how and so on. But I wanted to include that here, not just give you the data, but give you sort of the mainstream view of that as well. And just to touch on this, in a year teeming with scandals and missteps, Facebook's latest fiasco has inspired a clutter of leaks, finger-pointing, and internal conversations about the future of the company and its leadership. And after more than a year of bad press, internal tensions are reaching a boiling point and are now spilling out into the public view. The tumult is surprising given Facebook's history as a tight-lipped organization where employees had little incentive to leak information or voice dissent outside the company's walls. But then we come into the present. You could see what has happened with the stock price. It has been fluctuating, but even though we have seen it come off its highs quite a bit, it has still risen along with the rest of the market. And that shows us how bad quantitative easing has broken these markets down to the bitter end. Then I wanted to just touch on Apple. Apple shares jump after barely beating on earnings, and iPhone sales dropped 15% from last year. You have to think about what has happened here with Apple. Think about a company, one of the biggest in the world right now, and what did they do? Well, they had some problems with iPhones. They weren't selling enough, particularly in China. Part of the problem is because of the dollar. So what did they do? Okay, did they bring the prices down? No, you don't want to do that. What they're doing basically is lower their expectations, saying this is where we expect it to go. Then they barely beat that, and then the market loved it. Oh, you know what? It's not bad. I mean, it could be worse. So let's just push all our money into it. And this is exactly what happened. It's incredible to see, despite their failure, despite the fact that they had to bring the level down, drop the bar lower, and then that would be able to give them a boost up. This is insane the way that they run this, but it's just one scam after another. Don't worry. I'll tell you something right now. Buy your 7 shares of Amazon, buy your 7 shares of Apple, buy your 7 shares of Facebook and Google, because apparently it just can't lose. That's what the Federal Reserve decides right now. They want to print more money. They want to make interest rates easy, and so giving you a good opportunity to get in. That's all for this video. If you found it informative, please give me a thumbs up, and give me a thumbs up. You're supporting this channel, so I do appreciate that very much. All you gotta do is click that like button to support me, and I really do want to thank you for that. If you want the hard-hitting details that are not found in the videos where I get into the specifics, where I get into precious metals, where I get into equities, where I talk about commodities, I talk about real estate, I talk about all the different asset classes, including business. Then in my newer book, I talk about how to make money, reducing your debt, tax incentives, talk about inflation, talking about the central banks, so much more. Check them out at the link in the description. If you want the audiobook, you can get that at themoneygps.com.